Hello, kia ora. Welcome to this very first of our Budget Week specials. It's going to be an interesting week. Joining us here, I've got Blake, of course, and I've got Sam Summers from It's in the Ballot. How is everybody going today?
Fine, thank you.
It's a very, very interesting period of time, and suspense is eagering us on what's going to be delivered. And will I end up getting a fourth Chubba Chup instead of just three?
No, it's from what I've heard from the pre-budget announcements, it might be two instead of three. So you actually, because you were in the news using Chupa Chups as a comparison model for the tax cuts that you were looking at getting. You run your own business, you do It's in the Ballot, you sort of juggle a whole bunch of different things. Um, how much do you think the anticipation for this year's budget has fed into how people are feeling at the moment?
I think people are waiting for. There are those who realise the holy grail of flush with money and the instant effects or instant coffee effects on change thinly wearing away. There is a group of people who are just seeing it's not going to be, and considering as me being someone who lives in Wellington, we're seeing the doom and gloom. Considering, I mean, and as myself as a small business owner, I'm very fearful how this budget's going to be because my business relies on a good economics and of the local economy. And in this particular case, we're having way out of proportion job losses in Wellington, which is just going to affect all sorts of things in there. And I don't know if it's a ta-ta, ha ha ha, because our seats stayed Labour and two went Green as a retribution result, or what it is. But I see Wellington going to have a very tough few years as a result from the budget. And I mean, as describing, my tax cut would be $2.15 per week, which isn't even worth writing, changing the PAYE calculators on zero to do my wages.
If I can share something interesting, so I've been watching a lot of the local sports awards the last few days and weeks, and I was telling Paul about this, and every sports awards, when Mr. Luxon comes on at the beginning, every time he mentions himself, they go quiet. But as soon as he mentions the opposition, they get a big ovation everywhere. So I said that's not good for him if we're looking at it from both sides.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a testament of the time. I mean, he ain't just in the mania. I can tell you that.
No.
And even John Key had a lot more support, even though I personally think John Key did a lot of things wrong. And the backstabbing of some of the things he did to Bill English while he was Minister of Finance. But put it this way, Christopher Luxon's a different kettle of fish again. And I mean, that's a testament of the time. I mean, a good example is it took John Key to do what could be seen at 6 years to get to where things were. Christopher Luxon's trying to ram that through in 6 months.
Yeah, it's a lot of change. It's a lot of change for people to deal with.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting.
But the thing, the thing that's such a bad look is he has to stand there while they're looking awkward, while they're cheering, and quite often they're live streams so everyone sees it, and that's not
Comes
a
with
good
the
look
job
for the Prime Minister.
And actually, we're at that point in time where things are live streamed, whereas previously you might have had one news live streaming it, but everyone didn't have one of these sitting down there live streaming it to their personal feeds, pretending to be Chantel Baker.
Exactly. All right, budget question for you, because budget special.
Yes.
What do you think should be in this year's budget? What would you like to see in this year's budget?
An introduction of a tax-free threshold to keep us in line with the likes of Australia and the United Kingdom. I think that would be in there if they gave a tax-free threshold for the first 15. I think it's 15 grand per year. It would deliver more tax relief um, and more Chubba Chup lollipops than their current proposal, and it would put what the Chubba Chup lollipop equation that they're planning to put into the plus $100,000 plus bracket, will be put into those at the lower end. Yeah, I think it would if they. I think it would be if they got rid of the 10.5% on the first tax bracket and make it zero. I think that would deliver $20 a week average into it based on someone earning under 15,000 or less a year.
So are you thinking the first 15 would be tax free, and then on top
And
of
then,
that,
and then basically keep the rest of the tax brackets as they are. That's where I think they should go. I doubt that my advice would be taken on board. I mean, let's be realistic here. But that's where I believe would be the right place to put it, is introduce tax-free threshold, because we keep comparing ourselves to Australia and the United Kingdom. But that's one thing we seem to keep missing.
yeah, they tend to do things like capital gains taxes as well. But why would you want one of those?
If I had to pick a tax out of the ones that have been proposed the last few years, my pick, not that it would apply to me anyway, but my pick would be a wealth tax.
One I would actually think they should do, and no political party really has really looked at this, an international financial transaction tax on the purchase and sale of the New Zealand dollar.
How would that impact our tax revenue?
It could, depending on where you set the percentage between 0.01 and 1%, it could deliver as much as 30% of our GDP and potential GDP revenue, depending where you put that line in there on revenue into the books. But effectively, it was one particular calculation from 2017. It could have paid down the national debt in 3 years if it was if it just solely went to paying down debt and left everything else as is.
That's crazy. That is absolutely crazy.
So my my one's obviously going to be around the disability because that's what I'm doing at the moment. So we've seen in recent days that Priyanka has been grilling Minister Upton around the stuff that they've come for autism and specialty programs because they believe that mainstream should come first. Um, what are some of your opinions around that, Sam? And Paul, if you want to chime in as well. I just think it's horrible because not one education model is going to fit all. It's a bit like the mental health thing we've been talking about in recent days on Paul's channel. It's not a one size fits all approach. They can't do that. And it's very bad language what she's been using in the House in recent days.
I'll be honest, I've not followed it as much detail as you would have been, but I am concerned because it's going to take what could be a working program out of place that's been tailored to suit that particular person's need and replaced with a so-called one-size-fits-all approach that is likely to not actually deliver the intended results it is trying to deliver. And it will probably end up with having long-lasting effects on outcome, and it takes away people's necessarily their independence from it. And I'm scared that as a result of these cuts of disability funding, they're going to treat people on their best days as the bottom baseline, not people on their worst days, and make the assessments on that basis. And I feel that that is going to sit down there and basically kick a whole heap of people with disabilities in the teeth, and then having the response come back, why aren't you thanking me for it?
Yeah, and for me, it's like I was saying this to Paul. For me, it's like she keeps using the word essential, essential, essential. Nothing about disability should be essential, and for elderly too, of that matter. they are the two groups that shouldn't be essential.
And also, what is deemed essential? Who is going to make that call? You know, as was it Hohana Hiki sits there and says that, you know, they're doing a disability advisory group with, like, no one's in a wheelchair on that group, no one with disabilities. It's basically, it's like a bunch of people who haven't had the walk of life of experience, um, making decisions on people who have, and probably will horribly get it wrong.
Yeah, it's not a great setup that they've got. In terms of pre-budget announcements, that we're not giving you funding from now is they've done it a couple of times now, but it's not a way to run any kind of organization.
I mean, this is something I've noticed from people, and this is from like in my 2019 experience. Why do we need to make bus stops accessible? Don't they get half price taxis? And like this was like really
Uh-huh.
sitting around going, do you think someone on a supported living payment benefit with, you know, can afford a half price taxi?
Hmm.
You know, and like I mean, this was big one of, and it was Tony who was the one that was the biggest concern there because he was one with disability, being in a electric wheelchair, and his biggest concern. This is from 2019 with the buses was he could sometimes have to wait 5 buses for for his bus route to get home before he could have room to get on the bus at the third bus stop in on the bus route at peak. You know, how the hell is that meant to get someone home? And I mean, you know, you know, Greater Wellington Regional Council has the charter of like, you know, about being accessible for all peoples with disabilities. And it's just amazing how many people, you know, like they want to stop. Say, like a good example I always say is they want to stop a cycle lane for the disabled people, but they don't want disabled car parks to be put there for the disabled people. They want
Hmm.
general parking that disabled people can't park at. And they want they look at it from like, so that would probably be the best way to do that approach. Like the inline bus stops, the number of people who railed against inline bus stops in the name of disability go like, oh, so disabled people disabled people don't want to be able to have accessible easy boarding. They want to be able to have the point where they nearly fall out of their wheelchairs to get onto the bus. Is that what you're advocating for? While the arse of the bus hangs out in the middle road delaying the traffic, which is isn't that your primary reason for objecting to inline bus stops?
So the yeah, the last point I'll make on this is um, they say that they had to cut some of the subsidies. Luckily, it didn't affect me, but with like some of the other subsidies because transport wasn't being regularly used enough to have it to they believe to have it going. But you've got MPs like Julianne Genter tweeting out on X that at 10:30 at night the bus is full.
Yeah, or you know, or you have that one person in a wheelchair doing it. I mean, that's how Tony used to when he was in Wellington. That's he would go to the movies and he'll catch a bus back home, and you know he could do that. It's a little bit harder in Hamilton. I mean, we already know where we stood on that. I mean, you know that happened with it's in the ballot with bus stops. But I mean, that you know, it's about it's about accessibility. Actually, something Blake, you might know. Is the subsidy for total mobility is that still at 75% or has that been lowered back to 50?
So that they we won a court they won a court thing to let us keep ours at 75, but they wouldn't go any further. So there was some sort of court thing, and it didn't get much coverage, and it was on breakfast one day, I think it was, and
Yeah,
that
because Grandma and I were talking about it last time we do, and she goes, "Well, I'll find out next time we catch a cab."
yeah.
You know, like it's doing that. You know, as I mean, as you know, with Grandma, how she's like 96 and you know still getting around, but she, you know, she has to have total mobility because of her vision.
Mm, mm, mm. So
Well, I was going to say that that announcement about Whaikaha funding was just one of a number of pre-budget announcements that we've had. What are your thoughts so far on what's been announced before the budget? Has anything sort of jumped out?
One we had the other day, the one with Nicola Willis was interesting. The new agency or social agency or whatever it was, I watched it and just couldn't believe what that was. And she went to a what seemed to be a national hotbed of a lot of national business supporters to make it look good. So that was interesting. And they had a few like people that obviously went national that snuck in there because you had comments like, "Oh, Billingham tried this and it didn't work. How are you going to make it work?" And then she had to answer, but she didn't really answer the question as most of the national people do. Another one for me is the first home buyers that we've seen in recent days. And Mr. Bishop said we had to make tough decisions. And then that's not good either.
Especially when people have that bent in. I mean, there was a report on Thursday that actually came out literally on the first day of it being cut, and someone who had her application in approved but had to reapply with it because the settlement date got pushed out,
And that's
and
really common.
they got a phone call
Settle
to say,
settlement dates being pushed out happens all the time.
yeah, I know someone who had one pushed out 6 months
Mhm,
because a landslide happened on the property, and until the insurance claim from the
mhm,
vendor had been sorted, the house couldn't settle, and that caused issues because his lease ended in the previous place that was to line up with moving in.
mhm.
But that's I know one. I think this was with my mum and had that with one place. Settlement happened, but because the vendor hadn't found a new place, they rented the place off us for like the next 3 weeks off us. You know, that, these sorts of things do happen. And maybe that's where they need to walk back the policy and go. Maybe things that are already in place, subject to settlement or jeopardy of settlement, need to actually be sit there and looked at.
Yeah, and I love the point about this that uh, Pat Bridgerton made on BHN recently about, they had that story from the other day about the young single mother, but yet they said they were going to relook at it, but then they're saying they need to make tough decisions. And what Pat says is right, they can't go around saying, oh, we've got to make tough decisions, but hold on, I'll make, you know, I'll make an exception to make us look good again. That's not a
Yes,
way.
but how many people would be in the exact same boat? That's the question. And I mean, how
Mhm.
many people are yet to find out what's happened because of the very swiftness nature of the announcement?
Well, they took the, application offline before they made the announcement. Like, it was so fast, so swift. It's yeah.
It's probably faster than the removal of the cash. Was it the $1,000 cash start for KiwiSaver? That was
Mm,
from the. Oh, I'm trying to remember. It was a budget and was when John Key was Prime Minister, but literally it was something like if you applied before 2 p.m. that day, on budget day, you got it. But if you applied after 2 p.m. to sign up to KiwiSaver, you lost out.
so that raises the question then, who is this budget for?
Well, it certainly ain't the squeezed middle.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. That what bothers me, they campaigned that they weren't going to take blanket approaches like the previous Labor administration. But then you've got comments like uh, Mr. Simeon Brown coming out saying he wouldn't care if someone was killed on the road.
Yeah, it's like I think it's going to be a doom and gloom budget. I feel that there's going to be um, a whole heap of we've got to sit there and do this, we've got to sit there and do this. Let's blame Labor, And the one
Mhm.
I really don't want to see, but I could see it happening considering there is a bill going through Parliament at the moment. I wonder if they're going to raid the Michael Cullen super fund. That is something that could
Mm.
happen, and I hope like hell it doesn't. But that is something that is a tapable. Considering Muldoon did the same thing during the either the 70s or 80s. I'm not exactly sure when he did it, but it raided state pensions. And actually, my grandfather, I think it must have been after 78 because that's when Granddad retired. Because his state pension was not affected, but it would have been shifted out by then, and it's still paid out to this day. And for now, it's to Grandma because Granddad took a smaller payment to let his surviving widow have a comfortable lifestyle post into widowship. Considering he was older, it made sense. Um, but there was the same thing in there because Grandma never had that same generous pension plan when she became a principal um, later on. And a lot of that was, and when she was associate principal of Pororo College, that was during the 80s. So that must have been after the raiding of there, or it was don't put the money in there, you cannot be trusted. And I mean,
Mhm.
you know, so I wonder if that's what will be the super fund will be the thing that will get touched. Fingers crossed it doesn't.
Another topic for me that I think will be a big. So to answer your question, Paul, I think it will be very business focused in attacking the the groups like disability, like low income, like etc. Your typical national or coalition right budget. Um, but what I would say is that my concern is a lot of it's going to be around this um, issue that they're having at the moment with, uh, um, with the Oranga issue. I think I hope not, but I have a funny feeling there's going to be a big something to do with that, so that they can.
Like reduction of payment to
Yeah,
carers,
yeah.
or cutting the boarding school payments, considering some of the children that end up in Aotearoa and Tamaniki care, and teenagers typically, sometimes they put them in boarding schools because that's the easier, more practical solution. Could they suddenly go, oh, your boarding school payment finishes at the end of term two?
Mm. No, it's not good when that happens. How much influence then do you think the policies of ACT and New Zealand First are going to have on this budget? Considering the last 7 months, they've certainly had an influence on the way that the government reacts and does things. Do you think we'll see an impact from them that you can feel is theirs in this budget?
I think there will be more at the New Zealand First, unless they're suddenly going to, unless there is something to do with tobacco. That's the only thing that I could say throw that completely differently is if they change the process on tobacco excise tax, considering it has been muted that they might scrap the excise increase plan that kicks in from 1st of July. Um, that has been speculated, but I mean, I haven't heard anything more about it for a couple of months.
Mm.
Um, so that's something in there I do believe could be could be looked at. Well, I'd say in general, I see it's more actors going to have things in there such as how to remove food in schools, how to defund food banks, how to, we've got to talk about that, and we've got to set up charter schools because we've put a one size fits all learning approach on public education.
I'd like to give the coalition a little bit of credit because I do like one policy that they brought out recently, and that's the Easter Trading Members Bill. I'm actually quite supportive of that. I don't mind.
So that's the private members bill, not
Yeah,
the government bill.
sorry, the Private Members Bill.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah, it is a private members bill. It's from an ACT MP, yes, but it is a private members bill, and it's about tidying up the law. But they also need to tidy up the part about employment in there as well. I mean, at the moment, more Wilsons in Wellington were famous for doing this. Was that they would not roster any staff on Easter Sunday, and you were not paid. And if you wanted to be paid, you
Hmm.
had to take 1 day's annual leave. Now, I don't agree with that at all. There's nothing in the law to do that. Or when I worked at BP, we had to work Easter Sunday, but there was no time and a half a day of lieu. It was normal pay. Now, you got time and a half a day of lieu on the Monday, but that didn't help for the people who didn't work the Monday, only worked the Sunday. It basically, it was like working a holiday that you can do it. And the annoying thing was, when I went to BP Lavelle, we were next door to a bottle store, so guess where all the moaning people who couldn't buy their alcohol went into moaning about the bottle store being shut on one of the 3.5 days a year the bottle stores are shut and cannot buy alcohol.
Actually, does raise a really interesting point in that the ACT Party has long campaigned for us having had too many holidays and wanting to peel one back. They say it costs the economy, it costs the country to have as many holidays as we do. Do you think we might see something on Thursday that reduces the number of holidays or that changes the
We
way
might
that?
lose January 2nd, but does it really cost that much for the economy? Because if your business is going to go bust over 0.4% of the wage bill, and put that into context, 0.4%, you shouldn't be in business.
Mhm.
You deserve to fail. And if that is all it's going to take, but I mean, put it this on my end, I'm the one that tends to boom in public holidays. So in my case, that might do the opposite of what it's meant to be in there, because my opportunity to earn income, because you have those events. Like, I mean, with Easter, I did the Fox and Easter Fair on the Sunday. There was also a Friday, there was the Tutahi Bay Easter Fair in Auckland Showgrounds. I'm not sure if it still happens now, but they used to have the 5-day event of Easter fairs through
Yeah.
there. And I actually remember Bruce getting a special license to sell alcohol all of those 5 days. And we
Oh,
were
would have
actually
made it
telling
very
the
popular.
customers on the Friday and the Sunday, you can buy alcohol from us today, but you can't go to the bottle store. But yeah, it's the thing is there. What are they planning to do? Considering they see public holidays as costing the economy, but it's also it benefits different sectors of the economy.
Mhm.
That's the thing. Okay, it might, cost an employer, 0.4% in paying out wages for a day's work. But I mean, how much of that time they could be sitting there twiddling their thumbs? That ain't productive. That's actually less productive than, say, having a 4-day working week.
I do agree that they need to combine the anniversary days to something more national. That was the only holiday thing I don't like.
The anniversary days, because of the weirdness of
Yeah,
the rules. I mean, it's our only regional holiday. I mean, Labor Day used to be regionalised. And it's actually funny that the reason why it became a national 1-day holiday, because regionally it was in different areas, and the ship merchants, whenever there was the Labor Day of the retrospective area when the ship docked, no work got done. But I mean, that was yeah. So I'm not sure about anniversary day, but like anniversary day is a localized holiday. And yet there are some. I mean, most places it's quite simple. You do have like Dannyverk is a bit of a weird one because it crosses two anniversary day boundaries. So half the town celebrates Hawke's Bay anniversary, half the town celebrates Wellington anniversary. But in general, most places it's pretty well sussed which one you fall in, and you do get the odd experience like myself from It's in the Ballot, who celebrated Wellington Anniversary Day in Wellington and Auckland Anniversary Day in Hamilton.
Yeah, that's always been a bugbear for Hamiltonians that they don't get their own sort of Waikato anniversary day. But
Yeah. But
it,
did they
it, it,
ever have a historic provincial
kind-
government?
it was actually kind of tied into the Auckland Anniversary Day itself because it considered the whole region. But at the time, that region was also a big part of the Kingitanga movement. So there's a lot of angst about keeping Auckland as a regional day because it's very much a colonial. This is the white people coming in telling locals what's going on. Yeah, brilliant. Guys, thank you very much for joining me. Don't forget, everybody out there who's watching, we're doing this every night this week, except possibly Thursday. I think Thursday we'll all be hiding in a corner getting very, very drunk. So catch us again tomorrow night. We've got more episodes. You can find the schedules online. Super easy. Sam, Blake, thank you very much, guys, and I will catch
Thank
you
you for
guys
having
next
me.
time.